Let me tell you the beauty of making, so like you take a Steve Jobs, right? The beauty of making a Steve Jobs a virtual mentor is that you get into a conversation with him, right? Now, if you're listening right now, or if you're watching on Facebook, right, don't be like, oh man, Linal's crazy, okay? Let me explain, all right? You get into a conversation with them because after you consume a certain amount of a person's work, then you get into the mind of that person, right? And as you get into the mind of that person, you begin to understand how they think and how they process their challenges and even the questions that they've had in life, right? So, one of the things that I've learned from virtual mentors, let's take Frederick Douglass, for instance, right? So we talked about Frederick Douglass at length. One of the things I learned from him is the combination of faith and action, right? Faith, action, and prayer, and the necessity for that, right? Now, this is before I even got into coaching, where action became a huge part of the conversation. I learned that from Frederick Douglass because consuming his content, learning about his life, then you can get into these conversations like, Fred, what would you do if you were in my situation right now, right? Now, this, of course, I'm not talking out loud, but I'm thinking, like, what would Mr. Douglass do? Like, if I were sitting across from him and he were mentoring me, what advice would he give me? And of course, the advice that I get comes from the content I've read, from maybe the videos I've looked at on his life. The advice I get is aligned, right, with his teaching. And so I can go back in my memory bank, think about that, and say, this is what, Frederick Douglass would have done, right? Or I like to make it personal and say, Fred, this is what Fred would have done. Like, we're in a conversation, like we're friends. And this is the advice he would give his friend, Linal, right? To go and persevere, or to say a prayer and take massive action, right? And I'm just giving a classic example. I wrote a blog about this back in 2014. It's on the Inspirational Perspective website, inspirationalperspective.com. And I called out 5 virtual mentors that I've had over the years. One was Dr. Martin Luther King, and I shared a lot of information on him. Another was Napoleon Hill, the author of Think and Grow Rich. I've read and consumed just about everything that he's ever written. That's had a profound impact on my thinking and on my life. My stance on purpose became as strong as it is because of Napoleon Hill. That's where I got that from. So I had a real mentor who pushed purpose and introduced me to Napoleon Hill. And after I stopped working with that mentor, Napoleon Hill became the virtual mentor who really pushed me over the edge in terms of understanding the importance of purpose in your life. President Barack Obama. I've never had the opportunity to meet President Barack Obama. I've been in situations where I was close to it, but never met him. Doesn't matter. A little bit after his presidency, I made him a virtual mentor. I consumed most of his books. And here's one of the things that I learned from President Barack Obama. And then I'm going to go into the 5 lessons that I've learned from Maya Angelou in a moment. But people will always tell you what's unreasonable. But what defines greatness is ignoring the unreasonable impossibility and making the unreasonable happen. I learned that from President Barack Obama. Why? Because for him to even believe that he could be president was audacious. I mean, a one-term senator, right? Who became a senator from doing community work into the presidency, and then to believe, despite the challenges that he had, that he could push his own agenda. Now, I know a lot of us, some people have their problems with President Obama, okay? But what I will say is he did what he promised he would do. He's talked about universal health care, And despite the challenge that it was for him to put that in place, right? Whether you think it's good or bad, despite the challenge for him to put that in place, he did it.
Yeah, I was thinking that one.
Yeah, he did it. And it looked impossible for a moment, right? And that's one of the things I learned from him. And let me tell you something. You can take lessons from good leaders. You can take lessons from bad leaders. As a matter of fact, some of my best leadership lessons have come from bad leaders because they taught me what not to do. They taught me who not to be as a leader. So cool. The fourth virtual mentor, and he's a personal favorite of mine. If you do not know who Seth Godin is, do you know who Seth Godin is?
I've heard of him. Did he write
The Purple Cow. He wrote The Purple Cow.
Okay.
He wrote a ton of books.
Yeah.
But Seth Godin is a personal favorite of mine. Now, here's a funny story. I follow Seth. I read his work. He has a daily blog. I read his daily blog. And so, by the way, I'm giving you guys some nuggets. These are people that I learn from, right? The people that I look up to. Seth Godin has a phenomenal blog, but years ago he put out this piece where he was like, "You can come to New York and meet me and work with me." But he was looking for young people, and obviously I wasn't. I'm young, but I wasn't in the age frame of people that he was looking for. But my sister was. So after all these years of following Seth Godin, I got my sister to fill out the application, and she went to New York and met him, right? And then texted me a picture of both of them, him telling her to tell me that maybe one day you'll be in this spot. All right? And I'm still looking forward to it. I'm still looking forward to meeting Seth at some point. And I believe I will. But he's the author of about 17, I think 18 books now. A phenomenal mentor of mine. And the thing that Seth helped me with is create a product that stands out and ship it, right? He's the one that got me, kind of like Nike, just do it. He's the one that his reading always says, whatever idea you have, whatever you're working on, stop perfecting it, right? Make sure it's different, but it's not going to be perfect. So since it's not ever going to be perfect, ship it, make it happen, press publish, go, right? And so most of the big leaps that I've taken in my career, I've taken because of Seth Godin's virtual mentorship. The fifth one is Muhammad Ali, man. And you guys get why he will be a virtual mentor. I've had plenty of shows on Muhammad Ali, talking about Muhammad Ali. I love Muhammad Ali and what he stood for. And the ultimate lesson that I think we can all get from him is do the impossible and dare to be great. And then the other lesson you can learn is self-affirmation. I mean, this man spoke himself into greatness. I mean, he really did. And before we ever said he was great, he said he was great first. And believe me, when he said that, a lot of people, thought funny things about him. They kind of looked at him sideways. And, but he said it. And here we are today proclaiming his greatness because he declared it first. That is the power of words.